Ogre Battle March of the Black Queen is a game that's close to my heart. It's not a title that goes unappreciated by the fans, but in the minds of the masses it's been largely overlooked or forgotten. The sweet irony of a narrative about dictating the flow of history being lost to the annals is not lost on me. Given that it's one of the very few real-time strategy games on the Super Nintendo, and to my knowledge the only one to hurl RPG elements and large-scale army management into the mix, it's a unique but flawed gem that shines amid the standards of the time. If I've sold you already, prepare your fucking anus, because March of the Black Queen sets quite the high expectation before you even start it up. It's the first in a series of 4 interconnecting games and was created by the legendary Yasumi Matsuno, who would go on to be the key writer and director of masterpieces such as Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story. It's also named after not one, but 2 Queen songs from what I consider one of their best albums, Queen 2. The songs, of course, being Ogre Battle and March of the Black Queen. Now, with such credentials, you're probably thinking, there's no way Ogre Battle could be anything but a complex masterpiece with more depth than your mum's front bum, and that's not too far from the truth. So without further ado, let me tell you all about it. Upon starting a new game, you're greeted by a wizard who insists on testing your character through a series of questions. Your answers dictate what kind of stats and abilities your leader starts with, and what units your army will consist of. There's enough variety that you'll rarely see a repeat in the formation of your troops, so it adds a little individuality for each player. I'm rather fond of this feature as I love games that allow you to share your individual choices and experiences with other people, even if it's only something minor. Deriving such variance from a questionnaire also personalizes it to a degree, and I find that it's easier to become engrossed as a result. Once the leader is established, you're thrown into a minimalistic tutorial that plays like a regular stage, and the story, as well as the core mechanics, begin to unfold. The setting of Ogre Battle is one drenched in political strife and bursting with a lust for survival, revenge, and ultimately peace. Empress Endora was once a beloved and kind ruler. One fateful day, she was brought word of an invasion by a foreign empire and consulted with 4 kings of the land to combat the looming threat. The kings took this plea as a sign of weakness and launched a full-scale offensive against the Empress. This prompted her to go absolutely apeshit, and with the assistance of a wicked mage, she launched a counter-offensive and took control of the land to satiate her new hunger for power. The harsh turn from benevolent empress to tyrannical dictator saw anyone who may oppose her punished, and the threat of imprisonment or death was serious for anyone unwilling to surrender their freedom. This is where you, the player, come into the story. About 25 years after the fact, a small rebellion pops up and decides to fight it out in the name of whatever you feel like, really. You can fight under the banner of peace and freedom, or you can attempt to usurp Endora's throne for your own personal gain, and pretty much everything in between. With 12 possible endings based on your actions and a super duper secret 13th ending, there's a lot to take into account while you play, and you'll likely be unaware of most of these things throughout the entirety of your first playthrough. March of the Black Queen, being the special snowflake that it is, consists almost entirely of gameplay, with an occasional break to manage your army and a line or 2 of dialogue sprinkled throughout. There is a lot to cover here as the combat is heavily tied to exploration, resource management, and narrative progression, so to you Black Queen purists out there, if I missed something important, let me know, because I'm still discovering shit about the game 15 years after my first encounter with it. The first thing you'll interact with is this little menu sitting over the map screen. It's here that you can examine and organize your army before heading into battle. Unit management is a huge feature and incredibly lenient when it comes to customization. You'll start with 9 units, but each of these can be tweaked or dismantled, and new units can be created as many times as you meet the requirements. Unit makeup consists of 5 potential slots. One slot must contain a character capable of becoming a leader, and the other 4 are yours to do with as you wish. Smaller humanoid characters such as samurai, knights, mages, and clerics will take up 1 slot, whereas large monster characters such as griffins, dragons, giants, and octopuses will take up 2 slots. There's plenty of elements to consider when building a unit, as each character has a monetary cost, a particular set of abilities based on formation, and varying performance on differing terrain. The collective cost of each character is charged whenever the respective unit is sent out, and a residual fee is charged at the end of every day. If you fail to manage your gold wisely, you may find yourself unable to fund your strongest units, which can be a tricky spot to get out of. Each character has a defined set of attacks that they'll perform in battle if they're able. A knight, if put in the front row, will execute 2 standard attacks with his blade, but if he's put in the back row, he'll only attack once. If a mage is put in the front row, he'll bludgeon enemies with his staff twice, whereas the back row will grant him an incredibly powerful spell. Octopuses will move significantly faster on water than non-water based units, dragons clear mountains like your mother clears a cheesecake, and griffins go as the black crow flies, entirely unhindered by land. There is also the case of what types of units work well together, as a leader's stats impact the stats of those serving under them. If a leader has high strength, then all the characters within the unit get a small strength boost. Inversely, if they have low strength, each character receives a small penalty. There is also a stat called alignment, which is unique to each character and dictates how good or evil you're perceived to be. High alignment will mean you fight at peak efficiency during the day, while a low one will buff you at night. Classes such as the werewolf and vampire are also at a heavy disadvantage during the day for obvious reasons. With all these factors, unit building can actually become quite intense, as there's so much more depth than you'd ever expect from such a simple looking Super Nintendo game. It's important to understand precisely what each of your character placements will do and what effect it'll have on the group as a whole, as a unit lacking synergy will be hindered significantly. After you're done fucking around in there, you'll find yourself on the stage select screen. There's a total of 30 stages, and contained within each are a handful of towns and temples that can be liberated, as well as challenging fights, recruitable allies, and a shitload of secrets. The majority of your time will be spent on a Mode 7 map, where you'll issue commands to your units and micromanage control of the territory. At one end of the map, you'll find the base of your army, and at the other end is the base of the enemy leader. The goal is to send units to capture surrounding cities and gain enough donations to fund your army, which you'll need to lay waste to your foes, capture their territory, and secure victory. The only real interaction in this section of gameplay is telling a small unit where to walk and sipping your beverage of choice while they do just that. I prefer a weak, sugar-heavy, milky coffee myself. The pathfinding is decent in most cases, but there are certain moments of absolute pants-on-head retardation where any unit can clear half the map in the brave attempt to walk around a wall right next to it. This is quite rare and easily corrected with smaller, more precise movements. However, when you're focusing on your entire army and all of your territories, individual units can easily slip out of sight and end up fuck knows where. Ordering a unit to move to a city or a temple will occupy it. Upon occupation, you'll be prompted to draw a card, and each card either increases or decreases a certain number somewhere. Most cards tinker with your unit's stats, but some also affect the time of day or your reputation. Reputation is a meter that represents what the general populace thinks of you and can dictate how certain bosses and NPCs treat you. Not being aware of your reputation can see side quests completely cut off, or recruitable units become disinterested or even hostile. It's because of this that it's one of the most important elements in the game and something you should constantly be paying attention to. Cities and towns will give the player a set amount of gold at the end of every day, and this is the primary method used to fund your expeditions. Gold is easy to gain but hard to hold onto, and your reputation will start to tank if the townsfolk think you're prolonging the war to receive more donations. It's crucial to end the conflict as soon as possible, at least if you want the good endings and access to a bunch of side quests, which can ultimately lead to a coinage drought. As you send your units around the map for various reasons, so too will the enemy send their army at you. If they occupy your base, it's game over, so you'll need people defending your territory at all times. It's easy enough to go in blind and slaughter your enemies, but that doesn't come without a penalty. Reputation and alignment are affected by so many things, and it's so hard to keep them high. If enemies recapture towns and temples, you lose reputation. If enemies are killed by a unit of a higher level, that unit loses alignment. If a unit has low alignment and occupies a city, you'll lose reputation. Ideally, you send units with high alignment to occupy cities and gain reputation, which means you'll have units that are lower levels than enemies, or don't fight at all. The main issue with keeping low-level units is that it's impossible after a certain point. Naturally, characters level up by fighting, so if you're relying on one low-level unit to do all the killing, you'll soon find that they're no longer low-level. Alignment, along with another stat called Charisma, can also affect your unit's growth and whether or not they can be promoted to a higher class. So even if you're playing as an evil lord, you'll still need to watch your actions to keep your units progressing. This may seem like a lot to take in, but the way everything is taught by the game is so simple. You either pick up the intricacies along the way, or by interacting with townsfolk who can give you hints about particular mechanics and functions. As you march your army through the fog of war, you'll happen upon enemy units and will be forced to combat them. Battles resolve automatically, and most of the external control is through preparation and weighing up the landscape so as to have the best advantage. However, there are a handful of manual interactions which you can access during battle. These come in the form of tactics and cards. There are 4 tactics you can switch between at any given time. There is Best, Leader, Strong, and Weak. Weak goes after the enemy with the lowest health, while Strong is the inverse. Leader clearly pushes all your characters to eliminate the enemy leader, and I'm not entirely sure what Best does, but it's clearly the best option. How you interact with tactics will largely depend on what units you're up against, and it's important to be on top of things as skirmishes are won based on how much damage each team dishes out. The universal rule is the highest damaging team wins, unless you're up against a boss, in which case you'll always lose unless the boss perishes. So even if you're left in a dire situation, you can still win any given encounter if you play to your strengths, and that prominence of strategy makes me so moist for everything about Ogre Battle. But before I get washed away in my own juices, the other external control, as I mentioned, was cards. There are 22 cards in total, and each one has a different in-battle effect. Some may deal damage to the opposing team, some heal or buff your team, and the rest send enemies running for the hills. They are incredibly versatile and can save you if you're in a pickle. And of course, nothing in Ogre Battle comes without an associated cost. An over-reliance on them will either cause you to run out, as they can be expensive to purchase and town liberation is a finite resource, or cause your units to be under-leveled, as ending a battle with an attack card will route most of your experience to the leader of your army. I find that combat can be quite slow. With an upwards of 50 encounters on each map, you'll definitely want like a speed up button or a second monitor to look at furry porn while you play, as with a lot of real-time strategy games, a large chunk of the gameplay is waiting. This is a fairly large problem outside of combat as well, as units can take forever to move between various points, and the only way to speed it up is to throw a flying character into the mix. You can disable battle animations, but it really doesn't do much. Other than the cryptic nature and the occasional difficulty spikes, that's the only glaring flaw Ogre Battle has, and given the nature of the gameplay, it's easy to forgive if you play in short bursts or don't have a crippling attention span. Certain NPCs will have specific dialogue if you include particular characters in your unit, and this can lead to acquiring gifts, activating sub-stories within the overarching narrative, or even recruiting units to your army. Some of the triggers for these events are very well hidden, and it's justification enough for a second or even a third playthrough to attempt to find what you've missed out on. There's usually a hidden town or two in any given map, and these generally play some significant role in a subplot. Finding the hidden towns and temples is half the battle, the other half is figuring out how to trigger the events within and then meeting the requirements of said events. Plenty of important elements may be lost on you unless you look at a walkthrough. Ogre Battle, like most games, is best experienced blind, so take my advice. Pour bleach into your eyes to fully experience the majesty of March of the Black Queen. And I mean, when you look at the visuals, maybe you want to pour bleach in your eyes. It's not a bad looking game by any means, as the in-battle sprites are very well defined and the minimal animation has a strange charm to it, but a majority of your time will be spent staring at an ugly Mode 7 map, and as much as I adore this style, it hasn't aged particularly well. If you can make out what any of these primitive piss yellow sprites are supposed to be, you're a better man than I. With the harsh limitations of the Super Nintendo, especially by today's standards, it's easy to forgive this top-down view, as it clearly achieves something that many others would have thought infeasible or straight up impossible. Then we have the character portraits. They seem stuck between the typical anime style you'd see from early 90s JRPGs and something from a Western medieval fantasy setting. Despite barely looking like their respective character sprites, they still play an important role, as they only pop up when conditions for unique lines of dialogue are met, and they are quite a treat in direct contrast to the Mode 7 maps. And while the music's top tier, hearing the same set of tracks over such a lengthy game can definitely grate. If you decide to pick this up, I also recommend listening to Queen 2 when you get sick of the in-game music. You will not be disappointed. So just to close this relatively unstructured ramble, Ogre Battle's a complex system wrapped in simplistic design. To take such a brilliant, expansive title and somehow shove that into a Super Nintendo cartridge was beyond impressive. And while it may have some glaring flaws, and the age certainly shows, it's absolutely worth experiencing. I think it's important to look back at games that broke the mold and give praise where praise is due. Ultimately, my goal was to talk about the complexity within simplistic design and attempt to sell it to people who may not have experienced it before. Let me know in the comments if I achieved this modest goal, or if you just love Ogre Battle, because anyone who loves Ogre Battle is a friend of mine. Thanks for watching.